unprecedented value for our customers in terms of saving fuel, in terms of being reliable. We've created an airplane that's going to exceed their expectations by any way you measure it.
First of 2 deadly plane crashes in just 5 months.
Startling new developments in the doomed Ethiopian Airlines flight that killed 157 people.
2 planes dropped out of the sky.
Lion Air Flight 610 went missing from radar just a few minutes after taking off from Jakarta.
Something was putting repeated nose-down pressure on the airplane.
And then there was another crash, this time in Ethiopia.
This has now moved into a criminal probe.
MCAS activation, and all of us went, what's an MCAS?
Emergency, we are depressurized, so we do need to return back to, we have 177 passengers.
While Boeing might be controversial in 2024, a lot of its current issues have been bubbling under the surface for years now. We might just be witnessing the real-time collapse of an industry giant. But what led to Boeing's bad fortunes? To take things back a bit, the company we know today as Boeing was founded in 1916 by American lumber industrialist William E. Boeing. While it operates in the aviation sector, those who worked there in the earlier years have said that the company prided itself on being an engineering enterprise. It made the most efficient planes in the world, and that was its legacy. A big part of this legacy is owed to the Boeing 737 fleet of planes that was introduced in the late 1960s. The 737, in many ways, can be seen as Boeing's flagship product. It is perhaps its most recognizable aircraft and was the standard for commercial aircraft both in terms of convenience and safety. Much of this can be traced back to the 1960s when the company made history by developing the Boeing 747. This plane was a game changer for the aviation industry because it was twice the size of other planes that operated at the time. The Boeing 747 meant that people and cargo could be flown more efficiently and cheaper. The development of the 747 also led to the creation of the Everett facility. Eventually, the company settled on a property in Everett, Washington, and at 98.3 acres, it is the largest building on Earth.
You know, everywhere I go in that airplane, I am the second most important celebrity. People really just want to see the plane.
After being the top dog in aviation for so long, it was beginning to face stiff competition from companies like Airbus.
A growing number of companies succumbed to the charms of the A320. 400 planes, the largest order in the history of civil aviation. Airbus began to see itself in a starring role. In the US, the backlash was not long in coming.
In business, mergers and acquisitions are a common way to capture more market share and stay relevant, and this is what Boeing decided to do. Boeing entered into a merger with McDonnell Douglas Corporation in 1997. As we all know, two companies merging is bound to cause a lot of changes for Boeing. One of the biggest ones was its company focus. You see, Boeing's focus pre-merger was on making the best commercial planes it could, and it was pretty good at it. The McDonnell Douglas Corporation, on the other hand, made a lot of its money from fighter aircraft. Its then CEO Philip Condit also decided to move the company's headquarters from Seattle to Chicago. While the company got a $60 million tax credit from this, there was one problem. Its main engineering and design team was still in Seattle. In a company like Boeing, there needs to be a balance between the executives who try to make the money and the engineers who try to deliver a good product. Creating such a distance between the two groups was bound to cause issues, and this was only made worse by the new leadership approach. Those who had worked at Boeing before this move noted that they weren't afraid to point out mistakes or insist on quality because of the company culture at the time. Many reported that after the merger, the company's priorities changed. Whistleblowers have said that if they complained about errors being made or documented any of these issues, they would be punished.
I did have one manager that worked with me back he recorded all the aircraft and what was wrong with them and what they were sending out the back door that hadn't been fixed. And the director of quality told him, I don't want any more of these papers or any more of these pictures sent to me.
Some would have their pay docked, some were fired. The documentation part is especially important, as having it in writing that items were being left in planes or parts of the planes were not up to par would be hard evidence of Boeing's misdeeds and can be used in court proceedings. This is likely why there was allegedly so much pushback against employees who spoke out and a reduction in the number of quality control officers on the ground. When people say I changed the culture of Boeing, that was the intent, so that it is run like a business rather than a great engineering firm. The pressure to do this got even worse when Airbus overtook Boeing's market share in 2003. The CEOs were under pressure to increase share price, which put pressure on managers to deliver, which in turn put pressure on employees to work faster, even if safety was slowly being compromised.
Of 15 workers asked randomly, 10 said they would not fly on the Dreamliner.
I won't fly one of these planes because I see the quality going down around here.
You won't fly in one. Did you fly one of these planes?
It's also been reported that Boeing employees were incentivized to pay more attention to the company's market share. Boeing even ran a program called Share Value that would allow some employees to profit financially from its performance. The Boeing design team pitched an idea to him. They would design a new fleet of planes to replace the old models like the 727, 737, and the 757. He declined this idea and believed that they could still make money from the old models. While this was true, it meant that Boeing would be falling behind its competitors in terms of innovation, and this would come back to haunt them. Specifically, rival Airbus had launched the A320neo, which was more modern than anything Boeing had in its fleet. The big edge that the A320neo had was that it was remarkably fuel efficient. Any aviation expert will tell you that fuel is one of the biggest costs for airlines. This was made even worse at the time because fuel costs had gone up across the board. As such, Airbus dropping the A320neo at the time it did was a genius move. It showed innovation and timeliness and put the European company in a much better light compared to Boeing. Naturally, the company began to lose business and needed to do something fast. At this point, Stonecipher was out of the picture, and Jim McNerney was the CEO.
I'm Jim McNerney from the Boeing Company, and we are proud to be a part of this year's report. Our biggest contribution, perhaps, as a company, is designing airplanes that burn less fuel and produce a smaller carbon footprint.
But just like Stonecipher, he wasn't willing to put in the time and money it would take to design new planes and instead fell back on the old models. Boeing commenced a 5-year plan that would see the 737 upgrade to the 737 MAX with more fuel-efficient engines that would hopefully be able to compete with Airbus. The engineers at Boeing were reportedly not happy with this decision. The 737 had been in the market for decades, and they felt that it would be better to develop a new plane than try to squeeze more money out of it. But Boeing pushed forward anyway with its new and improved 737 model.
Welcome to the first flight of the Boeing 737 MAX 8, the first new airplane of Boeing's second century.
Not the greatest day. It's rainy, it's cold, but look at all the excited faces.
I'll tell you what, it's just a beautiful, beautiful airplane. Not only were they able to modernize the airplane with new engines and new winglets, but they were able to keep that classic, iconic 737 look.
But despite the fact that it was upgraded, the training manuals for it were not. On top of this, Boeing opted to not give the pilots for this new model updated training. The reason for this was reportedly a desire to skirt FAA regulations. You see, if an aircraft manufacturer releases a new plane, they have to get new certifications for it and give pilots in-depth training on how to fly it. Boeing, as we've established, didn't want to invest all this time and money, so there was a walkaround. If it updated the 737 just enough that it was more fuel efficient, but not so different that it needed more FAA certification and training, they'd be in the clear.
It's a lot easier to get a new version of an already certified aircraft certified by the FAA.
The plans were a success, and soon, hundreds of them were sold and took to the skies, with pilots none the wiser that they were under-equipped to fly it. As expected, it wasn't long before problems began to arise. On October 29, 2018, a Boeing MAX 737 flight used by Lion Airway departed from Soekarno-Hatta International Airport in Tangerang with plans to land at Depati Amir Airport, Pangkal Pinang, in Indonesia. The flight took off at 6:20 a.m. local time, but 12 minutes later, it had lost communication with ground control. The plane had crashed into the Java Sea.
Investigators are recovering pieces of a Lion Air flight that crashed into the sea off Indonesia this morning, including the plane's tail end.
All 189 passengers are feared dead,
killing all 189 people on board, as well as one of the divers during the recovery operation.
Captain reportedly asked him to check a handbook for information about abnormal events. So for the next 9 minutes, the pilots, they say, fought to keep the jet from nosediving before it crashed into the Java Sea.
But the plane had over 800 flying hours under its belt. How could this happen? Some pointed out that Lion Airways was far from the perfect airline. It had been banned from flying into the European Union between 2007 and 2013, and even during that time, there were a number of accidents that put it in a bad light. The Boeing 737 was an updated model, after all, and maybe the pilots simply didn't know how to fly it properly. One thing that stood out at the time was that no one suspected Boeing of possibly being at fault. Decades of excellence had brought the company so much goodwill that there was little concern that the 737 could be unsafe. This was despite the fact that the head pilot of the flight, Captain Bhavye Sunija, completed his training in California and had 5,176 hours of flight experience with the Boeing 737. Then finally the black boxes emerged, and the truth could finally be revealed.
There is a purity of this data. It comes directly from the black boxes, so it's recording airspeed, altitude.
Once investigations were underway, the crash was found to have been caused by software issues. Specifically, there was a new function called the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MCAS for short. This function caused the plane to nosedive several times before it crashed. On a technical level, the plane's angle of attack software had sent false data to the MCAS, claiming that the plane was at an incorrect angle. The job of the AOA software is to give accurate information to both the aircraft and the pilots manning it, but if it doesn't, all the other data goes off. Altitude and airspeed will be wrongly reported, and this is a recipe for disaster. In response, the MCAS put the plane in a downward-facing position.
There was a system on the aircraft which we had no knowledge of. It wasn't in our books. We hadn't been trained to it. It was absolute blindfold in a dark forest for us.
The MCAS, for all intents and purposes, worked as a background tool, and as such, the pilots weren't aware of it. The MCAS could have been turned off if it was known about, but it wasn't.
We called our safety experts and said, "Where is this in the book?" And they said, "It's not." And we learned later that no one across the globe had it in their books. It's unacceptable.
Saying in a public statement that the MAX was, quote, as safe as any airplane that has ever flown the skies, unquote. One thing that did come out from all of this was that some members of the press began looking deeper into the Boeing 737. It turns out that the MCAS was mentioned once in the manual for the plane, but nowhere else.
Boeing, when we'd asked them why they didn't put the MCAS system in the manuals,
They resorted to, well, we didn't want to overload the pilots.
Naturally, this caused quite a scandal, both in the media and in the aviation community. According to Captain Carey from the Allied Pilots Association, Boeing executives reached out to them to arrange a briefing session on the MCAS system. But on the day they arrived, they came with lobbyists, which is a strange thing to do when attending a briefing meeting. What's more, they didn't come with any training materials at all. Instead, they said that the changes were going to be made to the software of the planes soon. The pilots were skeptical and asked the executives why they didn't just ground the planes in the meantime. But the response was that no one had proven that the planes themselves were the cause of the issue. But surely, something had to be done about the potential issues with the MAX. After all, 189 lives had already been lost because of this. On March 10, 2019 at 8:38 local time, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 took off from Bole International Airport in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and was to land at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi, Kenya. But a few minutes after takeoff, the pilots encountered a problem. Its MCAS systems had somehow been activated and were putting the plane in a nosedive. The pilots tried all they could to stop it. But 6 minutes after takeoff, the plane went off the radar. The flight, with 157 people on board, crashed in the district of Gimbichu in Ethiopia. There were no survivors. Not only was this one of the deadliest air disasters in Ethiopia's history, but it was once again an air crash featuring the Boeing 737 MAX. Barely 3 days after the crash, 51 regulators grounded the 737 MAX from flying. It started with the Chinese aviation regulators, who banned the MAX from flying within the country roughly a day after the crash. This caused a ripple effect in which other countries began banning the MAX. Ironically, Boeing continued to take a stance that its planes were safe, even though 2 new planes of the same model had crashed within 6 months of each other. And it might just be in the headlines once again. Also in the headlines was the FAA. While many regulators had grounded the planes, the FAA seemed reluctant to take that step just yet, despite mounting public pressure. The way it was put, until more information came in, was that it would be too hasty to ground the 737 MAX. This caused a PR nightmare for it as well. While the planes were grounded, Boeing lost certification from several aircraft regulators, wasn't able to deliver new aircraft to customers, and suffered a PR crisis. After investigations were completed, a pattern was emerging that was eerily similar to that of the Lion Airways incident. When the plane's jack screw was found, the same way the Lion flight had. But did this mean that it was because of the MCAS? Regardless, this discovery took investigations in a new direction. Barely an hour later, then U.S. President Donald Trump ordered an emergency ban on the 737 MAX 8 and 9. 5 days after the Ethiopia Airways crash, every 737 MAX model in the world was grounded. The fact that the President of the United States went over the FAA to ban the plane himself spoke volumes. It also spoke volumes that some pilots were reportedly nervous to even fly the planes into the storage facilities where they would be grounded, even though they were new planes. In both the Lion Airways and Ethiopian Airways crashes, Boeing had tried to imply that the pilots or the countries could have had some fault. But what were the chances of this happening twice in 6 months? There was also mounting pressure from the victims' families. Protests were staged in Washington, D.C., with pictures of the victims shown for all to see. The family members also began looking into legal action against Boeing, who they felt was responsible. Ultimately, it was found that Boeing's 737 MAX planes had a software issue that made it hard for pilots to correct MCAS errors, which likely led to both crashes.
Both Boeing and the FAA knew in December 2018 that the original angle of attack sensor on the Lion Air airplane had failed, which is clearly a production issue since the airplane was brand new.
The media storm and regulatory nightmare caused by the crashes led to a hearing at the U.S. Congress. This hearing could determine if the MAX planes would be permanently banned from the skies and if Boeing as a company had any liability. The hearing had airline pilots appear to testify about what, in their professional experience, had caused the issue. Up until this point, Boeing was still pushing the narrative that the pilots were to blame. And even though the MCAS system had malfunctioned in both cases, the pilots did not respond appropriately to the situation, and thus, the crashes.
If we could get the software right, they wouldn't have to deal with an aircraft that's acting like a bucking bronco. I just don't want to take the easy path and blame the pilots.
We shouldn't be blaming the dead pilots. We shouldn't expect pilots to have to compensate for flawed designs.
The most disturbing thing we've found is there was a 2013 meeting, and they conspired to conceal this system.
And because Boeing was putting a bigger engine on an older plane model, there was concern that the planes would tip too far upwards since plane engines are further behind. So, the MCAS system was designed to prevent this. There was just one problem. This system was new. Boeing had one version of the MCAS that was designed on paper, but when it was tested, it turned out that it worked at both low and high speeds. So MCAS was expanded on, which meant it was more powerful and also used one sensor as opposed to two. This is a massive problem. The MCAS would have the power to change the plane's direction, and so it needed to be foolproof. Having only one sensor made it less than foolproof. Further documents showed that once MCAS was initiated, pilots had a 10-second window to respond, or the result could be catastrophic, even if they were trained. Amazingly, there was some pushback, even from the airlines themselves. Court documents showed that Lion Airways had brought up the prospect of more training for pilots, but Boeing refused this request, even calling them stupid in one email. After the Lion Airway crash, a technical analysis was done by the FAA and found that the 737 could have up to 15 more crashes in its life if the issues weren't addressed. In the weeks after the crash, Boeing increased the buyback efforts of its stock, and its executives got generous bonuses.
Relatives who have lost loved ones, if you could please stand so we could thank you all. Thank you for being here. If you could just stand.
And at that point, Dennis Bolenberg had to turn around and look at us.
We are sorry, deeply and truly sorry.
Finally, he resigned in December 2019, receiving $62 million in stocks and pensions. In November 2020, the 737 MAX was ungrounded by the FAA, and new rulings from Congress were issued to better regulate the FAA and companies like Boeing.
We've had multiple whistleblowers come before this committee and allege that Boeing is cutting every possible corner on quality and safety, not just in the past, but now. They've alleged that you've eliminated safety inspections, that there are fewer in quality and there are fewer inspectors doing quality inspections out there. They've alleged that when they raised quality issues and concerns, they were reassigned, they were retaliated against, they were physically threatened.
A lot of the testimony was the same. Boeing was cutting corners and not adhering to the engineering excellence it was once known for. But despite all of this, Congress cleared not only the 737 MAX to return to the skies, but also the MAX 7 and MAX 10 to get certification from the FAA, despite being outdated the same way the 737 was. Soon, this decision would prove dangerous. In April 2023, Spirit Aero Systems reported that fittings used to attach the MAX's vertical tail had faults. In August, Boeing itself reported that there were issues with the aft pressure bulkhead of planes being assembled by Spirit. By December, the company informed airlines using the 737 MAX that the rudder control system could potentially have loose bolts. Now, so far, there had been reports of technical issues, but no major incidents had happened since the 2019 crash. In January 2024, an Alaska Airlines flight from Portland International Airport in Portland, Oregon, to Ontario International Airport, California, had its door plug blow out shortly after takeoff. The incident caused uncontrolled decompression in the plane, which had to make an emergency landing. While all 171 passengers and 6 crew members survived, 3 people had injuries, and an investigation revealed that 4 bolts had been missing from the doors. Further investigation found that the missing bolts had been a fault on Boeing's part. Both United Airlines and Alaska Airlines reported that multiple aircraft had loose bolts and other technical issues. While the FAA initially audited the 737 MAX productions, it eventually gave the go-ahead for airlines with 737 MAX 9s to resume operations once all necessary checks were complete. United Airlines and Alaska Airlines resumed flights with the MAX, but it was only a few weeks later when these infamous planes would be in the news again. United Airlines Flight 1539, flying 737 MAX 8 from the Bahamas to New Jersey, experienced stuck rudder pedals shortly after landing. The pedals did not respond when the pilot tried to engage, and the crew had to use a different mechanism to keep the plane on a steady path as they slowed it down. Planes are generally one of the safest means of transportation, and Boeing MAX planes having so many technical faults in such a short time put a harsh spotlight on the company. Much of the spotlight was coming from inside, thanks to whistleblowers revealing secrets about the company's culture. Has said that it was not unusual to see a myriad of defects in the parts being sent out, sometimes as many as 200.
The whole time we were there, Boeing knowingly knew that Spirit was sending fuselages with many defects, many of them, bad. They knew that. They were aware of it.
Boeing hasn't commented on his allegations, while Spirit has totally denied them. He has said that scrap plane parts that were deemed unfit for international flights were repurposed by Boeing and put on the assembly line. According to his estimate, as many as 50,000 defective parts were used by Boeing and could be in the skies as we speak. One of these whistleblowers was John Barnett, who had worked as a quality control officer at the Boeing Everett factory, and later as a quality control manager for the Boeing South Carolina plant. During his time at Boeing, he said that there were multiple incidents of malfunctions being ignored, faulty parts not being fixed, and pressure to get planes constructed as fast as possible without regard for safety.
From day one, it's just all been about schedule and hurry up and just get it done, push the planes out, we're behind schedule. We don't have time to worry about issues that y'all bring up.
In March 2024, he was in the middle of depositions in Charleston, South Carolina, when he was found dead in his truck in the hotel parking lot with a note. His death had been ruled a suicide, but both his legal team and friends believe there is more to the story. After all, he was about to go up against one of the most powerful companies in the world, and maybe they decided to silence him permanently. Just a few months later, in May 2024, another Boeing whistleblower by the name of Joshua Dean would also lose his life. He had worked for Spirit Aerosystems, the manufacturer that makes parts for Boeing. He was so concerned that he even reached out to the FAA. In May 2024, he was admitted to the hospital for pneumonia and infection, and 2 weeks later, he was dead. After all, how could 2 whistleblowers from the same company, who were being represented by the same legal team, die within months of each other just as the firm was facing a PR crisis? Ed Pierson, a former senior manager at Boeing, has said that he walked off a flight shortly before takeoff when he discovered that it was a 737. As he said, he does not fly with that plane model under any circumstance. And you have to wonder what he might have seen during his time at Boeing that he'd rather lose the money he's already spent on a flight than be inside a 737. According to him, this included both issues with the quality of the planes and employees being overworked, which made things even worse. It's also not too shocking when you consider that in June 2024, Boeing's CEO admitted while testifying in Congress that the company does retaliate against whistleblowers. When asked how many people had been fired or otherwise reprimanded by the company for whistleblowing, he said, "I don't have that number on the tip of my tongue, but I know it happens."
How many of your employees have been fired for retaliating against whistleblowers?
Senator, I don't have that number on the tip of my tongue, but I know it. It happens.
The executives at Boeing, however, have continued to live large despite its many issues. In 2023, for example, CEO Dave Calhoun was reportedly paid $33 million in 2023 alone, despite Boeing's many troubles. But after the Alaska Airlines debacle of January 2024, he has declined to receive any bonuses this year. This probably came at the right time, considering there has been yet another incident with a 737 MAX plane. On April 7, 2024, a Southwest Airlines plane had the cover of its engine fall off during takeoff. The plane had left Denver International for Houston and had to return after the incident. As if things couldn't get any worse for Boeing, it seems its problems are now literally intergalactic. While you've probably heard the most about Boeing's planes, you should also know that the company also makes spaceships that are used by organizations like NASA. Unfortunately, one of the recent outings for Boeing's Starliner spacecraft has been met with some delays. Aboard the Starliner are U.S. astronauts Sunita Williams and Barry Butch Wilmore, and the plan was to be in space for 8 days. That did not happen. Instead, the spaceship has been away from Earth for over 37 days as of this video, and it's come to light that it was plagued with a ton of technical issues. Even before it took off, it had issues with its control thrusters and helium leaks. Despite all of these problems, Boeing continues to insist that the helium leaks have been mostly dealt with. Still, the public has found it hard to trust Boeing's word, and every mishap the company has, whether on Earth or in space, is only amplified. To understand just how big of a deal all of these scandals are, you need to look at the different ways they have affected people both within and outside of Boeing as a company. The Lion Airways crash claimed 190 lives, and the Ethiopian Airways crash claimed 157 lives. Between these two incidents, over 300 people died. This also ties in with the effect that this has had on Boeing's brand and reputation. For the longest time, Boeing was seen as a symbol of excellence in the aviation industry. And as far as most of the public was concerned, if you were on a Boeing plane, you were on the safest aircraft possible. This legacy took decades to cultivate, but in just a few short years after repeated scandals and the company's poor handling of them, this has been tarnished. It is worth noting that these scandals happened during the time of social media, which meant that the word could be spread quickly. Consumers who might not have followed up on the Lion or Ethiopian Airways tragedies and the congressional hearings may not have seen the videos from the United Airlines incident or seen content about the dead whistleblower. The loved ones of those who died in the crashes have also spoken publicly about how Boeing hasn't reached out to them since. Besides a generic PR message it put out and the compensation it was forced to pay by the courts, Boeing has been mostly non-communicative with the families. In the mind of such a customer, Boeing is an incompetent company at best and a cold, murderous corporation at worst. The damage that Boeing has taken in terms of both pilot and consumer goodwill is the sort of thing that will be studied at business schools for decades to come.
In fact, they were continuing to make the airplanes after the second crash. That's the biggest slap in the face to every single family.
My mission out of this is to make sure that when people get on a flight, that they get off on the other side.
Company culture at Boeing was also hit hard. In the Netflix documentary, one ex-employee noted that they'd gone from 15 quality control managers on hand at shift to only one.
They have like one quality person for almost the whole building on each shift. We used to have, 15.
During an undercover investigation, news crews secretly recorded conversations where Boeing staff admitted that corners were being cut and mistakes ignored.
Between me and you, they didn't put a shim on the landing gear yesterday on the lug. Night shift didn't. Oh, they said we don't have time to put it on.
The quest for profit caused an erosion of Boeing's culture of excellence that was built over the years. Not only was quality compromised, but staff were put in a position where they could not speak their minds. If Boeing, as a company, continues to survive, it will take years to reverse the damage that has been done to not only reinstate excellence as a priority, but earn back the trust of staff. The cost can also be looked at in terms of money. Boeing has lost $2.5 billion to pay settlements thus far and lost $60 billion while its planes were grounded. But this might not be the end of it. There is still an ongoing lawsuit against it, and those affected by the non-lethal malfunctions might also choose to sue. If Boeing pays more fines or has to settle more lawsuits, it could be out even more billions of dollars, and this will inevitably affect its bottom line. And this is assuming that the company can get out of its current slump. Even in the best-case scenario, Boeing will send millions trying to repair its reputation. Let us also consider the impact on the 737 MAX planes. There is already evidence that the updated planes can lead to accidents, whether or not the pilots have been briefed on the MCAS system. While Boeing has fought to keep the MAX planes in the sky for years, there have been calls from the public, experts in the aviation industry, and lawyers to retire them once and for all. If Boeing is forced to scrap the MAX planes, it will take a loss of billions of dollars. It will also have to invest billions in developing new plane models to replace the income stream that the MAX brought in, which will also take years. Not to mention that Boeing is being sued by its current shareholders in the wake of the Alaska Airlines incident of January 2024. Its share price took a hit after the incident and after the lawsuit was filed, and there is no telling how the company will be affected in the long term. But even with John Barnett's death, a case against Boeing will be moving forward, and its public image only seems to be getting worse. Once one of the respected companies in aviation, it has been riddled with scandal after scandal for years, and just recently, Dave Calhoun has announced that he will be stepping down as CEO in 2024. The story of Boeing so far is filled with controversy, and much of this can be traced back to its leadership shift in the 1990s. Now the company is facing a lack of customer trust, lawsuits, and potentially the end altogether. Only time will tell if Boeing can bounce back from yet another scandal, or if this is its final boarding call.